it is unreal that UFC 300 fight week is finally here. It's finally upon us. I mean, this card, man, from start to finish is just insane. I mean, even like Cody Garbrandt and Davison Figueiredo, that could be a fight night main event, and it's the first fight on the early prelims for this pay-per-view. I am so excited. I can't believe it's actually here. What are your thoughts, honestly? Like, we finally have made it to this point.
Just so many just fresh matchups. I feel like it's going to be interesting to see where we land after talking about each one of them. Um, but the good thing is that there is plenty to talk about, and so I guess they could really go anywhere. Just like because there really aren't. When you look at the card as a whole, there aren't too many fights that you can feel like 1,000%. Uh, you know, wholly confident in that whoever you think's gonna win is gonna actually win. But those make it. But what else is to say other than that makes the best kind of card? So
Exactly, and all these fighters are such high level fighters too. It's not even like one of those like Apex cards where you don't really know a lot of the prospects that are on it. This one, it's just all awesome fighters, and we got two awesome fighters in the main event. And it seems like people are starting to warm up to it, kind of like you were saying a couple weeks ago. But Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill for the UFC light heavyweight title. Pereira is trying to make his first title defense against the former champion who never actually lost his belt, Jamal Hill. And I wanted to start this one by kind of like talking about how I feel like people are just sleeping on Jamal Hill. And I'm not saying that I think Jamal Hill is going to win, but to say that he has absolutely no chance is just asinine in my opinion. I think he's being really underestimated. I think he can stand with Alex Pereira. Just depends maybe on the range. I think Jamal Hill would be best served to try and turn this into a brawl because that's when Pereira's been most vulnerable in his career. But I just think that this is going to be a really interesting fight, and I think that the fans are starting to see how awesome this is stylistically, and now we're like,
yeah,
it's here. So what do you think of this one, man?
I think Jamal Hill's the one that's gonna have to make this. Just here's what I think from the jump is probably either guy honestly doesn't doesn't isn't trying to. I know Alex Pereira's style is kind of naturally like he's gonna take one and he's gonna give it back that much harder, but I think in this fight whether there's a pivot to his training or whatever for this fight in particular, I don't think Jamal Hill's the guy he's gonna want to do that with, to be honest, because I would argue that Jamal Hill is a more crafty striker anyways, and that if Jamal Hill is able to keep distance close and just work from there, just keep it on the feet and keep Alex Pereira the one up against the fence circling, then that's probably the best way
Yeah.
that Jamal Hill wins the fight.
I mean, I think Jamal Hill has just insane timing. His power is
Yeah,
nuts, and like Pereira's been knocked out in the UFC and at middleweight, so maybe filling out has helped his chin a little bit. But either way, Jamal Hill hits like a truck, and I honestly think that Jamal Hill should try and
yeah.
make this into a
He's
dogfight.
gonna have to be a lot more precise with these shots too. Like I think it's really just even with Alex Pereira now as a light heavyweight, I think Israel Adesanya still kind of has like the blueprint down on how you beat Alex Pereira, and if it has to be by knockout, then that's just how it goes. But
Yeah, I just
um,
think he needs to make it ugly because if he just
yeah,
tries to stay at that kickboxing range, I think he can do some damage. But I think if he can make Alex break that range and start to brawl with him, Hill has the power to really starch somebody, and I think that that's very possible. And honestly, vice versa, same way the other way around, because Pereira has insane power, and at 205, it's only even better. And there's one factor in this fight that I'm still like grappling, no pun intended, in my brain with. But Jamal Hill hasn't fought since January of last year, so it's been a long time since we've seen him in the octagon. Do you think that ring rust will play a role in this fight at all?
uh, I think that's a good considering the guy he was in there last with. So like over to share. I think um, when you're in that kind of fight with with someone like that, then I guess just obviously naturally just having to get back to the whole training regimen and all that. Uh, but I would think cardio is still going to be a very just hammered down thing that Jamal Hill's working on as this fight gets closer. Um, and yeah, like I said, I think he realizes that he can't get caught with that crazy power of Alex Pereira, and that's pretty much just about it really. Because it could. I think it still could very well go another way in the sense that either guy isn't throwing as much early on and just trying to feel each other out. You probably see like a lot of leg kicks and stuff, and yeah, just kind of that way, trying to just chop the other guy down a little bit because these are, I mean, they're both like it gets talked about all the time. How I think from before, obviously Alex Perry being in a lower weight class, and now you see how big he truly is as a light heavyweight. I think the same goes for Jamal Hill too. He's able to. Once again, I think it's gotta stay on the feet one way or the other. So.
Yeah, I don't see either of them really using their grappling. Like maybe the clinch and like holding people up against the cage to get like a quick breather or just some close range striking. But I think if anybody would try to mix it up a bit, it would be Jamal Hill, and not even because he would be in a position where he can't strike with Alex, just to keep him on his toes. Because I think if he can put that extra element in there, then Alex has more to worry about, and he has more of a chance of landing something crazy, because we've seen that a lot. When you can threaten that takedown, a lot of the time you'll get your opponent to drop their hands and you could land that big knockout shot, which we know Jamal is very capable of doing. I agree with you. I think the cardio is probably the biggest question, and not because it really has been in the past, just because of the circumstances. It's been so long since his last fight, so you just have to wonder. And I don't know, man. I kind of like you were saying in the beginning, this is one of those fights that you really just don't know. Like a lot of things can really happen. And I think that they match up very well against each other. And we know both guys are really confident. I mean, Alex Pereira is now 2 division champ, not obviously at the same time, but like just to think about it in the sense that Alex has had like 7-8 fights in the UFC and he's already been champion in 2 divisions. That's kind of crazy to think about. And Jamal Hill, we know he's confident. Me and you were laughing about his social media videos after last week's pod, because in case you guys haven't seen it, just go on like Jamal Hill's Instagram and check out some of these videos that he's been putting out lately with his UFC 300 main event prediction.
He listens to all Jamal Hill definitely stays very much in tune with what's going on that net. When it comes to the internet on it with MMA, so
yeah, he definitely
hears
has the
it
pulse.
all. He hears it all.
I love it though. It makes it more entertaining because it's like not even a disrespectful thing.
It has to. For me, the thought just gets brought up. It's like, was it because everyone originally thought Alex Pereira, and probably still does think Alex Pereira is gonna just steamroll him, that this was an underwhelming announcement for the main event, or is there just there's just more expectations? But
I think it was probably a mixture of both, personally. I mean, that's what I'd assume. I think some people were still in that mindset of like, oh, we got to get like Brock Lesnar versus DC.
yeah,
but like that wasn't ever going to happen. And then, like you were saying, I think a lot of people are discounting Jamal Hill's chances, which I think is not a smart thing to do. I think that he has a very good chance at winning this fight. And I'm so curious to see who's going to walk out of there with that title. But
to me, it's gonna come down to who lands more significantly, and that'll be it.
Yeah, I'm curious. I think Alex has to keep the pace slower, and I think if he can do that, then maybe he can pick him apart at range a little better. But if Jamal makes this fight into a brawl, I think all bets are off. Honestly, we don't really know what's gonna happen after that. But we have another title fight on this card, and that's in the co-main event. And for Chinese MMA fans, this has got to be a cool one. Zhang Weili versus Yan Xiaonan. And I believe this is the first ever UFC title fight between 2 Chinese opponents. So that's kind of crazy. And honestly, like my first impression of this fight, and I think I'd be lying if I said anything else because I've been so adamant about this in the past, but I really think that Zhang Weili is the truth at 115, and I don't think that a lot of people in that weight class have really much of a chance at beating her. And on the surface, I
Yeah.
kind of feel that way about this fight because Jan is good, don't get me wrong, and she's improved a lot fight to fight. She's good all around. Good striker at range, good grappling from the Team Alpha Male gym that she trains at. But Zhang Weili in there, she's just so strong. She's so fast. I think her athleticism is unparalleled in that division. And her power, just in her striking too, is just insane. I think that she's going to be able to bully Jan in there a little bit. And she does that with everybody. Like, that's not even really me trying to, like, discount Jan's chances because, like I said, she has
Yeah,
improved so much fight to
exactly.
fight.
We have seen it before in a past. Well, not in a not yeah in a past championship reign and in Zhang Weili's quest to get to the title in the first place. Anyways, yeah, I think she's clearly like stamped her stamped her mark as one of the greatest women's strawweights that we've seen. So
Yeah, I really think she's on another level right now, and I think that in this fight we really might see that. And who knows what Jan
yeah,
is going to bring, but
it's just another challenger, someone that's improving fight to fight. Kind of yeah, like something I feel like in a way similar to Cheeto Vera getting his shot. Just someone that you see as just gets better and better, and people gravitate towards. But
yeah,
in this case, I think it's just more. Yeah, man. The list of challengers for Zhang Weili honestly just gets smaller and smaller. So we'll see if she takes out another one this
yeah.
weekend.
I mean, I'd be a hypocrite if I just spoke against everything that I've always said. I still believe this. I think Tatiana Suarez is the only person who has a chance against Zhang Weili. And that's the fight that I want to see at some point. I hope we can see that by the end of 2024. I have a hunch that we will. But yeah, like you kind of said, Jan in a way just feels like another challenger, but like we kind of just said, like she does look better seemingly in every single fight that we see her in, so maybe she'll rise to the occasion. I mean, I think for UFC 300, we're hoping for everything to just go haywire, so who knows what's going to happen, but my hunch tells me that Zhang Weili is going to defend her title. So, speaking of titles though, this one isn't a UFC title, but the BMF title, and that is going to be fought between Justin Gaethje and Max Holloway. And this isn't the main event, but I would say that this is the fight on the card that I'm looking forward to the most because this could definitely turn into 5 rounds of absolute chaos. And I've thought about how this could go so many times, and there's just so many different directions. Like, I think Justin Gaethje, it would be smart for him to use his leg kicks early. I mean, we've
Yeah.
seen people do well against Max in the past with those. Yair Rodriguez or even Alex Volkanovski, they tore Max's legs apart, and we know Gaethje has just some killer leg kicks. But Max has a granite chin, so I don't know if Gaethje should be really swinging for the fences right off the bat. I think he has to set up that knockout shot if he's going to go for it because Max hasn't even been dropped in MMA, let alone knocked out. And even at 155, in the past, when he fought Dustin Poirier at UFC 236, he didn't really bulk up, so it felt like he didn't really have the power to land with authority on Poirier. But it seems like Max has bulked up a little bit before this fight, and he understands what he needs to do to be competitive at lightweight. So I think you just have to hope that those changes will do him some good in this fight. But I mean, what are your initial thoughts on this one?
I th- for something like I think in the way that we think that it's how Max has never been dropped. When it comes to this fight in particular, I think it's gonna take a lot to drop either guy. To be honest, I think Max should honestly stretch the fight out as long as he can and try to drag Justin Gaethje to the deep water because I think one way or the other, whether it's Justin Gaethje, he's clearly down heading into the last round and he's just got to go for broke, or Max just feels that the best way to win the fight is just let Justin Gaethje be the aggressor early on and just stick and weave and all that and just not get hit as much. I just think his boxing is just obviously that much more crisper and just I think just precise. Whereas Justin Gaethje is the one who's gotta try, like. Because when you got Max Holloway across from you that's who you gotta knock down. Then yeah, that's a task that not many people are up for. But
nobody
no,
technically,
no,
never has happened. So
exactly, which is official. So I don't know. This has all the makings of being the very first fight for that to happen. But at the end of the day, it's who gets their hand raised. And yeah, I think when it comes to the feet, I think Max Holloway he's been showing some of the best striking, I feel like, of his entire career. So
but he does get hit though. That's like I mean, it doesn't worry me because technically we've never really had a reason for it to worry us because he does get hit so often. But up a weight class, Justin Gaethje I think has more physical power than Dustin Poirier. I think Poirier's power comes from his timing more than anything. But Justin Gaethje, he just has like that touch of death. And I'm so intrigued to see if he can be the first person to knock Max down. I don't know if he can. I honestly feel like this fight is going to go either the distance or far into the championship rounds.
I think Max Holloway should look to stay in Justin Gaethje's range as much as he can, to be honest.
Yeah. I kind of agree with you. I think it would be best honestly, even for Gaethje to just be the aggressor, but I think that also kind of plays into Max's game a little bit because Max will be able to counter with some straights when Justin throws those looping shots. I mean, it's inevitable. Justin has definitely gotten more composed on the feet, but you still get those crazy overhands, I think that Max would be best served to probably try and back up and counter because I think if he's coming straight at Justin, he's going to get hit with so many leg kicks, and that has to make an effect on you. I mean, especially at 155 now, too, against a guy who has proven that he has insane leg kicks. I think that this fight really is just going to be a close range war.
Yeah, and there's a lot of similarities in this fight to the main event, in my opinion.
Very, very true. Very true. And I can't believe that it's this Saturday that we're actually going to get to see this. I think I've dreamed about this fight, just seeing these two guys in the center.
This was honestly like not actually the first, but maybe the first fight for the main card that got announced.
Yeah, no, it was one of the first. I think it was the first for the main card because the first two were Aljo and the Rakic Yuri fight too.
Yeah. So I think from there is when we should have known that this card would be as stacked as it is.
Yeah, I mean when they announced Aljo and Kattar and Yuri and Rakic, I think they said that those were going to be on the prelims. Yeah. And when you're thinking about those guys being on the prelims, especially Aljo and Yuri too, like we're very recently champions. It's kind of it speaks to just how stacked this card is. I can't wait.
When it comes to the BMF belt, like this is a title that's really only been fought for like the biggest pay-per-views so far that it's been.
Yeah.
That like when was the belt even first introduced?
The Masvidal Diaz fight, UFC 244. So I don't know. I don't even factor that in. I just really say it because it's there. But honestly,
it creates some pretty. What we've been seeing so far has been creating some like dream kind of fights. So
very true. I mean, I don't know if we would have gotten this fight without a BMF belt at stake. But I mean, in reality, it just doesn't mean much. Which it is what it is. But I think we're just here for this fight stylistically in particular because it's just going to be crazy. Like I said, I've been picturing these two just going toe-to-toe in the center and just slugging it out. I really think that that's how this is going to look. But even besides the fight, I look at what the stakes are besides the BMF title, and I don't really know what would be next for either guy. So Gaethje, if he wins, you could argue that he deserves a title shot, but he's also deferred it to the fight before this, which we'll get to in a second. Like, he thinks that the winner of Oliveira and Tsarukyan is probably going to get the next title shot. But if Max wins, I don't really know what he does next. Like, does he... Because if he wins, that you just beat a top, 3 guy at 155. So, does he stay up at 55, or does he go back down to 45 and maybe try and get that title shot against Ilia Topuria? I mean, it's definitely possible. He's Max Holloway. He has enough drawing power that you can give him a shot, even if he didn't win his last fight at the same weight class. So I'm honestly just really intrigued to see what happens after this fight, as much as I am to seeing like what's going to happen in the fight. I really think that this one is going to be fight of the night. I think it could be fight of the year, especially if it goes all 5 rounds. My expectations are very high for this one, and I try not to do that too often because when you have high expectations, it leaves you a lot to desire, or a lot with it leaves you with a lot to desire, and we don't know exactly what's going to happen. But like you said, when we think about it stylistically, this just has all the makings of a classic, and I really truly believe that we're going to be in for one. So if there's one fight that casual MMA fans should really pay attention, it's got to be this one, I think. But even the fight before this, I've just been in awe that these two fights are one after another. I think that this could be the greatest hour of mixed martial arts that we've ever seen, because before this insane BMF title fight, we have the lightweight #1 contender fight between Charles Oliveira and Arman Tsarukyan, as I just said. And I think these guys are going to be the ones who could throw a real wrench into Poirier or Gaethje's title hopes at 155. And this is another one stylistically. Like, I think it just has all the makings to be a crazy fight. And let me tell you why. So Arman Tsarukyan, he's a very fast starter, and Oliveira, he tends to get himself into trouble early, but he's so good at just rebounding and coming back from that because his jiu-jitsu is so good. So when people drop him, they're hesitant to really go after him on the ground because he has such good sweeps and he gets to people's backs. He's so good on the ground, and even on the feet, honestly, he has solid Muay Thai, but he tends to brawl a little bit. And Arman has power. Like, people don't talk about that. They talk about his grappling, but Arman has power in his hands and in his feet. I mean, we saw in the Beneil Dariush fight, Arman starched him with that head kick, if you remember. So Charles has to be like on it very early, and if he gets hurt, I'm very curious to see how he deals with that and how Arman deals with that, because I'm not sure if Arman's afraid to go to the ground with him. And that might be a mistake. Only time will tell. But man, I can't believe it. Like, every fight on this card I look at and I'm like, wow, how is this even happening? And this isn't even like the feature fight. This is the second fight on the main card. Like, how insane is that? But man, I mean, I think I've said as much as I could really say. Just what do you think of this one?
Yeah, I mean, I personally think Charles Oliveira is like the most complete submission specialist in all of UFC, and so there probably is something with each of his opponents going in, like, I'm gonna maybe, if I drop him, then I'm gonna go to the ground with him, even though you did just mention how good he is off of his back, and guys do have that hesitation, but I feel like Tsarukyan here is still good enough on the top that he can at least make it interesting. But I would still, if I was Arman Tsarukyan, I would still look out for those, because Charles got some long legs, to be honest, and he knows how to use those leg kicks, and when he is in brawling mode and he is going for that knockout, right there is pretty much where I feel like guys get their best opening in order to drop him. But when it comes to out grappling Charles Oliveira straight up, whether you're trying to get him on the ground or you already have him in a sprawl on the ground, that I don't know if this is a 3-round. This is a 3-round fight. All right,
this one's 3.
Maybe
it can't all be 5.
Yeah,
I wish they could.
I know, right?
I really wish they could.
Over 3 rounds, I think Arman Tsarukyan is just, he's simply he's just a high IQ enough fighter to be able to last all the way. It's just I guess how if he's looking not me, I won't even say that he's necessarily looking at, I don't see anybody who's looking to go on the ground with Charles Oliveira, but think he's he can't, I don't think he can get put on the bottom when he is there with Charles Oliveira. So
I mean, even on top, like you kind of said, he's just at risk. I mean, Charles will throw up arm bars, triangles, try and sweep you to get on your back. I mean, Charles is basically like a human backpack, and his jiu-jitsu, I agree with you, is world class. I think that Charles needs to dictate the pace of this fight, because I think if he can pressure Arman and keep him up against the cage, he's more likely to force Arman into making a mistake because Arman's going to have to swing to get out of it. And we know Charles Oliveira is very capable of walking people down.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see like what the stakes of this fight do to the style of it, because, you know, both of these guys want to get back to Charles wants to get back to the title shot. Arman wants the title shot. So you got to wonder if either guy is going to be just swinging with a little bit more juice just to try and get that crazy finish and really cement that title shot. Because right now, yes, this is the de facto number one contender fight, but with Poirier's win in the last pay-per-view and depending on what happens in Gaethje versus Holloway, I think anything can happen right now at 155, and I think it's up to the fighters that are going to be in the octagon to determine who's going to be next. And I think whoever has the craziest win, I think that's probably who's going to end up getting it. But as of right now, it seems like this one is the number one contender fight. I think anybody would love to see either of these two fight Islam Makhachev, whether it be Charles again or Arman again, because Arman had a pretty close fight with Islam a while back, if we remember that. I'm trying to see, when was that fight actually? I'm curious how many years ago at this point. But because Arman, like, he's young, but he's been around for a little bit. Let's see. 2019 was when he fought Islam.
Wow.
And, you know, that was a very close fight, lost by decision. Man, like, it's just, this is going to be so crazy. And I know I keep saying that, but it's just the truth. This is the card that I think really all fans, casual or not, need to watch.
I like to see Tsarukyan get this kind of push, to be honest. I think what he's shown already in this time is it's been.
Uh-oh.
Yep, and there goes Siri. I don't know what I said.
Siri wants to talk about the fights, dude. She's hyped, bro. Imagine if instead of that, like, she's just like, I think Charles Oliveira is going to kick Arman's ass.
That's what I'm thinking. All right, yeah, I don't know how that happened, but yeah, no. She heard someone's name, and I guess whatever. But no,
who knows?
Yeah,
but yeah. Anyway,
that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's the fight. So moving on to the main card opener, and I think a little bit of a controversial main card opener in a way. Bo Nickal versus Cody Brundage. I know some fans think that Bo Nickal doesn't deserve this right now, but at the same time, this really shows you how highly the UFC values him, because they wouldn't be putting him in this type of position if they didn't think that he could really deliver. And I really think Cody Brundage only has like a puncher's chance in this fight, because on the feet, Bo Nickal has gotten better. He has a lot of power, but on the ground, we already know, dude. Like, his wrestling is elite, world class, and he's rounded it out so well with jiu-jitsu. He has submissions. Yeah. He's good on the ground no matter where it goes. And I think Brundage, he has to just knock him out. I don't think there's really any way else that he can win, because if this fight goes on the ground, I think that's a wrap. Right?
That's part of why I think they had to get Bo Nickal on the main card, because he is always looking for that finish. And here it's just it's gonna be whether or not if Brundage he wants to stay on the feet with. I think he has to stay on the feet with him, but
I was gonna say, I don't think what Brundage wants really matters in this one. Bo Nickal, if he wants to get him down, I think he can probably get him down.
I guess how much of a brawl can there really be from these two on the feet?
Yeah,
you know?
I think if Brundage has really any chance, it has to be in the very beginning of a round, and just to draw him in, because Bo is willing to stand. Like, it's not like he's constantly trying to take people down, like kind of like Ben Askren was. Like, he does try to strike in his fights, but I think that the clear way for Bo to win is to take him down. And Brundage, I mean, even physically is at like a disadvantage. I was looking on Tapology. Bo Nickal has a 4-inch reach advantage too. So even on the feet, I think it's a tall task to think that Brundage could close the distance easily without getting taken down or countered. It's just, I don't know, man. I think that if Brundage is going to get it at any point, I think it'll be when Bo maybe blitzes in to get into the clinch. That would be, I think, his best chance. But I don't know, man. I think that this fight is Bo Nickal's fight to lose. I think he's a huge favorite. I know Cody Brundage was like a plus 1,200 underdog. And no disrespect to him, more so respect to Bo Nickal. I think that those odds are
Yeah,
pretty fair, to be honest. And I think Bo Nickal is probably going to deliver in this spot. And if and when he does, I think that we might see a nice little step up for him after this because now, if he gets this win, all eyes are going to be on him, both hardcore and casual. Bo Nickal knows how to talk on the mic. He has an exciting style, even for a grappler. I know a lot of casual fans don't enjoy grappling, but Bo Nickal has just a relentless style on the ground, and he goes for the finish, whether it be with ground and pound or submissions. So I think that this could be a really big night for Bo Nickal if he can
for
get this
sure.
one done. But to move on to these prelims, and it's crazy that these fights are even prelims, but Yuri Prochazka versus Alexander Rakic is going to be the appetizer right before the main card. And the prelim main event throwback, we used to say that by Sean's. So this
Yep.
this really is a
Yep.
prelim main event if we've ever seen one. But Yuri Prochazka, obviously former UFC light heavyweight champion, recently lost to the current champion who's headlining this card. Alexander Rakic, we talked about ring rust for Jamal Hill, but I think ring rust can really affect him in this fight because Rakic hasn't fought in nearly 2 years. So I do think it's possible that he will look rusty.
Mm,
I honestly think it's inevitable that he's going to look rusty because Yuri Prochazka has such an awkward style to deal with, and I think having no fights for the past 2 years and then hopping in against a guy who's going to switch stances, move up and down with his chin out forward, and just throw shots from places where you wouldn't expect. I think that he might have some trouble early with that, and I think Rakic needs to drag this fight into the deeper waters in like the second and third round where he can kind of get used to it and maybe pick up on any pattern if Yuri gives him anything, which is not a given when it comes to
yeah.
Yuri's style. But I don't know, man. Like,
I,
what do you think of this one?
I think whoever loses this fight is just gonna have a super tough time getting to the title in any way, to be honest. But it is interesting that this fight is happening now with Rakic coming back from his layoff, and Yuri just had his return fight as well, where yeah, he couldn't get the title back. So yeah, it's really. I don't think it should take a whole lot because how it is, how it how it is probably and the way that Yuri wants it is that he wants Jamal Hill to win. If Jamal Hill wins, then that title shot comes a lot easier if he wins this fight against Rakic. But Rakic, you gotta thrust right after this fight. If he wins, like you gotta get him in that talk like right away, pretty much. I don't think there's much time you can really waste with a guy because he's someone who's been ready, to be honest, for this kind of stage and spotlight, and now we just have to see if he can beat a former champion. And
Yeah, I mean, it brings him right back to the top. Obviously, Yuri just fought for the title. He's a fan favorite. If Rakic can go in there and do something special against Yuri, he's right back at the top. And for him, it doesn't really matter who wins in the main event. So that's what makes this fight interesting. I cannot believe that this is a prelim. It's so crazy. There's a bunch of other fights that we're going to get
yeah,
into that are somehow prelims, but I mean, I'm very intrigued by this one stylistically, just because Yuri is such a wild card in there. I wonder how Rakic is going to deal with that after such a long layoff. But on to the next one because the hits just keep on coming, dude. The fight before this is Aljamain Sterling's featherweight debut versus Calvin Kattar, and there's so much that you could think about for this fight. I mean, the first thing that I thought of when I was doing the outline for this was, is Aljo's strength at 135 going to translate to 145? And I really think it will because he has such good grappling and he's so technical on the ground. I don't think that that's something that's
yeah.
limited to one weight class. You know what I mean?
Here's one little note for me is that we see because earlier in this card we're seeing something similar. I guess in the sense of Davison Figueiredo now being a bantamweight. So he's getting there's that dynamic in the sense that does the guy moving up the weight class who's already good on the ground, does he get even better because now he's bigger and stronger perhaps? That's something where because if to for that to just shine a light on that fight, for instance, like I just think that's a really bad matchup for Cody Garbrandt, one way or the other. So here with Calvin Kattar, a guy who likes to stand and box, I think Aljo could throw a lot of stuff at him that Calvin Kattar clearly has never seen before at as a featherweight. So. Nah,
I mean,
yeah.
Aljo's technique on the ground with his wrestling and his jiu-jitsu is incredible. I mean, when he fought Henry Cejudo, took down an Olympic gold medalist in wrestling almost with ease at times. And talking about his jiu-jitsu, I remember when he fought Cody Stamen and he hit him with that Sulyov stretch, which you never see in the UFC. That's so hard to hit. And obviously, I talked about Charles Oliveira being like this, but Aljo's the same way. He's like a human backpack. He's so good at getting to the back and securing those rear naked chokes. He has good front headlocks too. His guillotine's nasty. I just think that Calvin Kattar, he needs to keep this fight on the feet because that's where I think his strengths lie. I mean, he has such good timing. His boxing is incredible fundamentally.
To think, if Aljo, I guess, I feel like if Aljo's able to counter strike and feint and a level change and all that, then that could overwhelm Kattar in a way, and I guess Aljo would have to get an opening there to either take him down or try to land something. But
yeah, I think Kattar's takedown defense needs to be top notch in this fight because once it's on the ground, I think all bets are off with him because Aljo is just so technical and he's so slippery with his jiu-jitsu. And I honestly think that this fight could be like a number one contender fight for Aljo because he was just champion at 135, and it seemed like towards the end people were finally starting to give him that respect that he deserved the whole title reign, just to be clear. And he's kind of, I would say he's one of the bigger stars at this point in the UFC. And I think if he wins this fight and calls for a title shot, I think you'd have to consider it just because of how his history was at the weight class one step down. And if Kattar wins, he just beat a former champion and a guy who's still really in his prime, honestly. I think that Aljo is still really good. I think that the Sugar Sean fight was just, bad matchup, I guess, because O'Malley, I think, has proven that he's the real deal too. But I just think that this fight is so important for both guys. I mean, Aljo, you wonder what would happen if he loses this fight. He says he's not going back down to 135 under any circumstances. So, I mean, he's put all of his eggs into this basket. And I think if he wins, there's so much for him to gain. But he also has quite a bit to lose.
I mean, I still think there's a lot to gain, too, for Calvin Kattar. To be honest, he just mentioned how the win for, even though it is Aljamain Sterling's featherweight debut, like how a win for him here could still really get him back, because he was super close to that title. But I think that Max Holloway loss obviously threw the wrench into those that dream and aspiration for now. But I mean, yeah, man, he's got the UFC 300 card. What better stage to get back on that, to get back to that title picture. So,
and honestly too, like being on the prelims, it's free. It'll probably be on ESPN, so more eyes will probably be on it. And I just can't. I mean, even the prelims could be a whole main card that was better than a bunch of other pay-per-views that we've seen in the past. And like, nuts. I mean, I look at the Brazil card, the one after this. I think it's right. That's the one after this. Yeah. And you look at the main card for that. The prelims for this are more stacked than that main card, and that's not even like disrespecting UFC 301. It's just because this fight card is just insane. And we're talking about debuts. I think we'd be remiss if we don't bring this up. Kayla Harrison making her UFC debut versus Holly Holm at 135 pounds, so also her debut in that weight class. And the obvious thing, Kayla Harrison's first battle is going to be with the scales. She has to make weight. She's looked good, but that's also social media. Like, she's not gonna post something where she's like struggling. She's like dying here at 148 pounds. I don't know how I'm gonna make it. Like, you know what I mean? So I think the first battle is definitely with the scales. I do believe though that she will make weight. I think that the posts on social media are genuine. I think she'd probably be a lot quieter if this was going to be a rougher weight cut. but I don't think she's really going to know until she gets down to those final few pounds, 138, 137, 136. That's where it's going to get really tough for her. And, we've seen in the past with Cyborg trying to cut weight like that. I mean, she was in that bathtub on that ESPN piece just crying because it was that painful. So you have to hope that that's not going to happen with Kayla Harrison, because I think we all want to see an even fight. We don't want to see Kayla Harrison go in there drained and then lose to Holly Holm because of that, because that just feels not unfair, but I feel like we wouldn't be getting the full potential of Kayla Harrison if that's what happens. But she made the decision. She signed the contract. So she's going to have to make that weight and get down to at least 136 pounds, maybe 135 if she wants to try and get the championship weight. Because if Kayla wins this fight, I think it's safe to assume that she's going to get a title shot right off this. So I don't think it'd be a bad idea.
It really shouldn't take all that long, you'd have to think. Even for her to make this cut at all. So I think she's still got to really put on like a hell of a showing that's gonna really turn people that way. But
I think she's capable of it too, though.
Yeah, I think anyways right now she's one of the biggest stars in all of women's MMA. So now she's on the biggest stage, kind of like MVP coming over, who obviously got the spot on the actual pay-per-view, but Kayla Harrison here now at the biggest pay-per-view of the year at all, and then making the weight cut that she has to against someone like Holly Holm, who
she's a star herself.
Yeah, exactly.
It's such a fun fight.
Yeah, who also really I really don't think can lose this fight in much of a way, but
I mean, she's got a pretty good history against judo practitioners, obviously. Yeah. But right. Ronda Rousey, she came into that fight concussed, apparently. So she's the greatest of all time.
I forgot that was that was very recently, that interview. Wow.
Yeah, I loved everybody just making fun of it because she was saying she's the greatest of all time, and like all the comments are like according to herself. Like, damn, man. I mean, Ronda's a pioneer, so I respect her, but I do get it in a way. She just gotta let it go.
It is cool though. It is pretty cool though to have that similarity between her and Kayla Harrison, because obviously just like Ronda Rousey, like, and then especially for this division, like Kayla Harrison is a big girl. So.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like Ronda Rousey was a true bantamweight. Kayla Harrison has, I think won one of her gold medals at like 172 pounds. So she's big, and nuts. She has that power, and especially in the clinch, she's so good with her judo. And when she gets people on the ground, she holds them there. And Holly Holm has great takedown defense. I mean, you have to when you fight like her. And I think her grappling has gotten so much better over the past few years. But this is a different breed who she's going up against. And I think that if Kayla isn't drained by the weight cut, I think that this could be a really, really big performance for her, because Holly, that's the other thing with, we're talking about her versus Ronda Rousey. Holly was a lot younger when she fought Ronda. Like, she was still really in the midst of her prime. Now she's getting up there in age, and Kayla Harrison is really coming into this fight with a lot of positive momentum. It seems like the weight cut is going well. Like I said, it seems as if she's been working towards this for like a long time, like even before she signed for the UFC, because I think she knew if she did come to the UFC that she'd have to fight at 135 pounds. So it seemed like she was slimming down before that, and we're going to see what happens on the scales. I think if she looks energetic on the scales, then we'll be in for a really fun fight, and I'm super excited for this. I mean, I think Kayla Harrison's motivation is at an all-time high, and I'm really excited to see if she can finally prove herself like she wants to. But to move on to the first fight on the prelims, we have Sodiq Yusuff versus Diego Lopes, which honestly on this card has been such a sleeper. And stylistically, this is a fight that could be crazy. It's not your typical striker versus grappler, because I think they both have strengths in the opposite. But Sodiq Yusuff, obviously on the feet, has insane power, speed, athleticism, and Diego Lopes on the ground is, I think, another one of the best jiu-jitsu practitioners when it comes to just pure jiu-jitsu. I think that he can do a lot of damage in there on the ground with his submission attempts, and maybe get some points that way on the judges' scorecards. But for a 29-year-old, I wrote this down because I kind of thought this was crazy. 23-6 at 29 years old, that's like very experienced. So I think that's it's worth noting, even though Sadiq Yusuff may have more like high level experience in the UFC, Diego Lopes has been going at this for a long time, and both of these guys are really good all around, and they have their specific strengths. So I think this one's going to be a really fun one. Like all the fights on the card, it's another one where you really don't know what's going to happen.
I love watching the Sadiq Yusuff fight because with all that craftiness and athleticism, like he's very powerful with his punches too. So I think when it comes to Diego Lopes, obviously to start things are going to be on the feet, but I think that takedown defense is really going to have to show itself, improve itself, and we're going to see how much top control he would be able to get of Lopes on the ground. So
yeah, I think Yusuff would have a tough time grappling with him, not because he's a bad grappler or anything. I mean, he has really good like front chokes, like good like guillotines and stuff like that. But Lopes is so like good defensively and offensively with his jiu-jitsu. I don't think that he'd be able to submit him. I just think that the way he like seamlessly transitions from position to position, I think that that's going to be a lot for Yusuff to deal with on the ground. And on the feet, though, I don't think it's completely one-sided because Diego Lopes is very, very explosive. And who knows, honestly, if he can even land a shot that could knock out Sadiq Yusuff.
yeah,
I think they're both in a very similar position in this fight, like in terms of their places in the division, because they've both had their cracks at the top, and they didn't really take that next step.
yeah.
And I think the winner of this fight is going to get another chance.
And both of them, I think, are really going to be looking at that finish too, because they probably both realize that in a sense too. But obviously, both of them should be going in thinking that they want to just completely separate themselves from the other after this fight. So
yeah,
got to do that with a spectacular finish. So
and I think we have a lot of potential for that because both of these guys are really good at delivering those. So, I mean, dude, even the early prelims are crazy. We don't have to really get as detailed about these, but just to list them off. I mean, Jalen Turner versus Renato Moicano. That's a crazy matchup. I think that Jalen Turner would be best served to keep that fight on the feet, most likely.
for sure, yeah.
Yeah.
I think just really, I think already Moicano can't walk into Jalen Turner's range like that, and then even if he tries to circle, and Jalen Turner's got him up against the fence, then I think really all Jalen Turner has to do is pick that shot and just let the right hand loose.
Yeah, he has insane power, and he's so big for lightweight. He has a 3.5-inch reach advantage against Moicano, and Moicano, we already know, isn't the striker that Jalen Turner is, but Moicano is so good on the ground. He's another guy who has really good jiu-jitsu. A lot of good jiu-jitsu guys on this card, I'm noticing, as we go through this. And for Moicano, the good thing about fighting a tall opponent like Jalen Turner is you have more to work with when you're trying to take him down, like because his legs are longer, his base is less centered. I think that he should try and get him to the ground. I mean, 10 out of his 18 wins are via submission for Moicano. And similar to the fight that we just talked about, I think the winner of this one is going to get a nice little step up because Jalen Turner's coming off of that crazy win over Bobby Green, that brutal stoppage. Yeah. And he's already in the top 10, so I think if he beats Money Moicano...
Yeah, Moicano's coming off the Dober win in which... no, that wasn't. Was that the main event of that fight night?
I think it was the co-main.
The co-main, yeah.
I can look, though. I'm still on Tapology, but...
it wasn't the most... it wasn't a win that's going to really blow anybody away and just assert Renato Moicano's spot in the lightweight division, but it was obviously enough to get him this fight here, and a fight that I would think he's coming in as the underdog in, and we just gave our thoughts about how he can't play into Jalen Turner's range, and that he's gonna have to adjust to that and already kind of start the fight on the back foot naturally, but yeah, I mean,
he has to close that distance.
Yeah, exactly.
Get it into the clinch. That's the key.
Yeah, get the job done here, and we'll see where he goes. Moicano wants money.
Yeah, I love that. I love Money Moicano. That's been like my favorite personality that's come out of his career. That's for sure. And he wants Patty next, and Patty's interested in that fight. So if Moicano gets a win, I think we could very well see that. And I think that could be a fight night main event, honestly. But I think it'd be best served on a pay-per-view.
Haven't we seen Patty fight Jalen Turner?
No, I don't. I think
okay.
That'd be crazy.
No, yeah, that would be crazy.
That would be kind of crazy to think about.
Probably what I'm thinking is just another one of those call-outs from either Jalen Turner to Patty or Patty to Jalen Turner, because obviously a bunch, like with Moicano, for instance. I don't know if either... I don't think either fight happened. At least right now, that's how I feel. I don't think either fight happens. Even if Moicano wins.
You don't think that they'll give him Patty? I think they give him Patty on the
know.
UK pay-per-view that they've been talking about. That's a fun fight, man.
I guess if they really do want, because once again, I don't think they're trying to fast-track Patty like that, even though he did just face Tony Ferguson, but it's obviously the Tony Ferguson we know now. But
I mean, you can't gatekeep him forever. He has to eventually take that next step. And honestly, Moicano might be a decent enough matchup for him, because they're not like the greatest strikers, and they're both fun grapplers. Both have good jiu-jitsu, good wrestling. So I'd be curious to see how that fight would go on the ground between those two. And by the way, I wanted to answer your question before. It was the co-main event, and the reason why you didn't remember of the main event, because that main event was Imavov versus Dolidze, which, if I remember correctly, that was one of the worst fights I think I've ever seen. So I just remember that one was really boring.
I was away for that card too, so now I really remember.
Yeah, I feel like we might have even skipped it.
Yeah,
because probably. The main event was so bad. Like, we might have previewed something else. I couldn't tell you. It was in February, so if any THH historians want to go back, they can let us know. But yeah, I thought that was funny, because I was like, oh yeah, I remember that main event was just awful. But I mean, even before that fight though, we have another insane fight with a former champion, Jessica Andrade versus Marina Rodriguez, number 4 versus number 6 respectively. And both of these ladies, really good strikers, in very different ways, though. I mean, Andrade has that lights-out power, a lot of strength, and Marina Rodriguez is going to try and use her Muay Thai, keep Jessica Andrade at range, which, personally, I don't really think she's going to be able to do. And Andrade also has really good wrestling, and I think that could really be the deal-breaker in this fight, because Andrade is a bully, man, and she's good at breaking that range. I mean, I remember when she slammed Rose on her head, that was crazy. And we already know that Marina isn't really that great against like aggressive grapplers like this. So I do think that this is going to be a tough matchup for Marina, but she does have a 3-inch reach advantage. So I think if she can use the jab and the teeps, I think that she might be able to keep Andrade off of her. But that's a tall task for 15 minutes against Jessica Andrade, who is just used to steamrolling people, to put it bluntly.
Yeah.
So
I guess it's just a matter of, does Jessica Andrade, does she blitz Marina Rodriguez and come forward, and obviously knowing how powerful Marina Rodriguez's right hand is, and obviously her Muay Thai style, that she's just gonna be the one naturally coming forward and going to be in Jessica Andrade's range.
I just think Andrade is so much stronger, and I think when she closes the distance, especially if she gets this fight into the clinch, I think it's going to be a long night for Marina, or a short night, depending, obviously, because Andrade is one of the few people at 115 pounds who has true lights-out knockout power. And if she can get this fight into close range, man, like, who knows what could happen on the feet or on the ground. But the last 2 fights on this card, I mean, it's crazy that this might be the first time we've talked about a full card since like 2022, like when we started the pod. But Jim Miller, the MMA gods have blessed us with Jim Miller versus Bobby Green on this card. I mean, there's so much that we could say about their styles. They both have so much experience, but I think that this fight really, everybody, OG fans are just excited for this. Jim Miller's been on UFC 100, 200, and now 300. He gets his wish, and he gets a matchup against Bobby Green, who is still, kind of like Jim Miller, like, has been around for a while and is still doing it, man. Like, he's still getting good wins against good fighters. And Bobby Green has such a weird style with that Philly shell. And I think on the feet it's going to be interesting, but I think Jim Miller is going to similarly to Jessica Andrade. I think Jim Miller would be best served to try and close the distance and get Bobby Green to the ground or even just in the clinch. So this fight, personally, I think it's going to be a war. I think these two dudes are going to show up for the fans, man.
I really do hope so in some way. But man, Bobby Green's stand up is still just so crisp. I feel like, and he's still like really just a really sound striker, and who obviously has a super powerful punch. So.
Yeah. I mean, both of these guys are dogs, dude. Like,
I think really, I guess what it is like if really only in the sense that he walks Jim Miller down, that Bobby Green, uh, you know, gets the win. But either way, like I can see it going either way by the end of the fight. To be honest.
Yeah, I mean, they both have so much UFC experience, not just fight experience, like high-level fight experience.
So
high level.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think Jim Miller's going to allow himself to get walked down, but who knows how overwhelming that Bobby Green's stand-up is really going to be, because we've seen in the past that it has been for a lot of guys in the past, and I guess similar to this matchup too for Jim Miller, a guy who would be I would think is gonna want this fight to be more on the ground than the feet, but yeah, I guess I guess we'll see who really controls the center pretty much.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think whoever sets the pace for this fight is probably going to have the advantage, because I think Miller needs to pressure Bobby Green, but I also think that Bobby Green can't let himself get backed up against the cage, because that's when that grappling is going to start to come in. And not that Bobby's a bad grappler, he has pretty good takedown defense, but Jim Miller, I think that's some jiu-jitsu you really don't want to mess with. That's just my personal opinion. I mean, both of these guys, though, have such high-level experience. But speaking of high level, we were talking about Cody Garbrandt. Remember back at the Ridge when I used to imitate him all the time? I don't know if I still really have it. I kind of just tried it there. But, we were talking about fight IQ. Cody Garbrandt, my right hand, that's my IQ. That's one of my favorite quotes ever. But he's fighting Davison Figueiredo in the first fight on the early prelims. So crazy to think about that this is even an opener of, like, even a main card opener for this fight would be kind of like crazy to think about. I think this could be a fight night main event. There's so many different places where you could get a fight like this, because Cody trying to get back into the bantamweight top 10 against Davison Figueiredo, two former champions opening up the card. They both have such fun styles, and I think that they're both really quick, but I think Cody's chin still worries me a little bit. And, like, yeah, he's coming off 2 straight wins, and that win against Kelleher for Cody was just insane. But this is such a big step up in competition. And it kind of like you were saying before, and I'll let you get to that in a second, I'm a little bit worried that this might be too big of a step. But at the same time, we've seen Cody pull off some massive upsets in the past. I mean, you think about when he won the title against Dominic Cruz. Yeah, that was years ago, but you never really know what you're going to get sometimes from Cody Garbrandt. If it's his night, this might be a war. But I don't know, man. I want to let you kind of like talk about it, because you were mentioning it before. So what do you think?
Yeah, I think Cody's honestly just going to have to do just a super good job of, just not really letting Davison Figueiredo just circle around him and then try to pick shots from that, because I think with whatever takedown that Davison Figueiredo attempts, Cody Garbrandt's just gonna have a really just difficult time one way or the other stuffing it and trying to keep the fight on the feet. But and then at the same time, just anyways on the feet, just Davison Figueiredo is just he's still got that strength going for him. He's still one of the, at least when it comes to because obviously we haven't seen much of him at bantamweight, but as a flyweight, just that's the one glaring difference to me, that from everybody else, that what got him to be the champion that he was just he was just still able to just like pretty much ragdoll guys. And now that he's at the bigger weight class, and he's fighting a guy like Cody Garbrandt, who obviously specializes as well as he does as a striker. I just think he's just still gonna just try to just out muscle Cody Garbrandt really with however way the fight goes, to be honest.
I think Figgy's going to be the one pushing the pace for sure. And he's good at fighting off the back foot, though, so I'm not really that worried about it in that sense. But Figgy, I mean, when you look at his one recent bantamweight fight against Rob Font, it looked like the speed was still there, the power was still there. If anything, 135 really might be his natural weight class. And I think it's an uphill battle for Cody Garbrandt. I really do. And I love Cody, man. Like, I think a lot of fans do. He's just really entertaining. Excuse me. Always has been. We've been talking for a long time. That's I can tell it's starting to get to my throat. But Cody Garbrandt, I mean, he's still got that speed too, and his power, like Figgy's, has that like one-shot knockout power. So it's gonna be tough, but I do see a window.
Yeah.
Might just be false hope.
I just think the longer the fight goes, the more it's gonna favor Davison Figueiredo.
I agree with that for sure.
So yeah, in the sense that you get to that round 3 and Cody's already done most of the striking and has obviously however much he's landed, if he's exerted that much on the feet already, then Davison Figueiredo has always got that ground advantage for him too. So
yeah, I guess it's good that this fight is 3 rounds. I guess that would play a little more into Cody's favor. It just seems like after Cody had that really bad bout with like his health, he just its cardio just hasn't really been the same, which sucks because that's not even really his fault.
No.
So I don't know, man. Like we've kind of seen Cody against like a little bit of like a lower tier of opponent lately, so he's getting this test. If he wins, he's back in the top 10. He has everything to gain, but also everything to lose in a sense. So I'm very curious to see how this fight goes, and obviously we won't have to wait very long because it's the first fight on the early prelims, which is just crazy to think about. I mean, we just talked about this whole card from beginning to end, and every single one of these fights I could see as like a fight night main event. And it's just wild to think about. The UFC did such a good job with this card, and it almost makes those Apex cards lately a little bit worth it because we get such a huge card for UFC 300. And, when I look back at UFC history, UFC 100 was awesome because it was so stacked. UFC 200 was stacked, but it had so many things fall apart kind of like at the last minute, all that John Jones stuff back then. It's cool that this fight card has really stayed intact the whole time. We haven't really seen anything get screwed up. When I was looking at the card on Tapology, I thought this was funny. On the bottom, it has like canceled or fizzled bouts, and fizzled bouts it had Leon Edwards and Bilal Muhammad. Bilal's just catching strays everywhere, man. Like he had hope that he was gonna be on this card. I kind of hoped he was gonna be on this card because it just made sense, but they're still not giving Bilal that shot for some reason. It's crazy. It makes me a little worried because I feel like if he hasn't gotten it already.
I don't know, man. Apparently they gave Leon Edwards 3 names, and Bilal Muhammad he wasn't one of them, and so Leon Edwards isn't fighting at UFC 300.
But either way, man, this card is so stacked from start to finish. People need to keep their eyes on this one. There's no bathroom break fights, in my opinion, on this one. So, I mean, I can't wait to watch it. I know all the MMA fans can't wait to watch it. And either way, no matter how this night turns out, albeit I think it's going to be a pretty good one, we'll be back next week to break down all the action. So we'll see you all then.
Dash up in a foreign car. It's the type of shit that you be doing when you going hard.